With respect to coal, I guess I'm a little surprised it's that big a number coming out of Russia. But give us a sense, can Europe replace that coal from other places? And by the way, what's going on with the market for coal? As I understand, there's actually increased demand for coal these days.
Yeah, demand for coal has been going up, and coal markets are tight, which is why actually the energy crisis that preceded Ukraine began with shortages of coal. But Russia is the biggest supplier of coal to Europe, but that's probably the easiest thing to stop and to pull in from other places.
So, Dan, what about the oil and gas side of it? As I understand, that's much harder potentially for Europe to substitute oil and gas from other sources. What are the prospects for that over the next year to 18 months?
David, as you said, it is much harder. And that's why oil and gas and energy was really carved out of the sanctions initially. But what started to happen is you've had self-sanctioning. And we think out of the maybe 4 million barrels a day of oil and product that gets exported to Europe, about half of that is being self-sanctioned, disrupted in some way. The million barrels a day from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserves helps balance some of that out. But I think the pressure is going to grow on oil, although, as you said, Orban will oppose it. But I think given what's happening, the toughest one to deal with is natural gas, because there's just not that much, although U.S. LNG has been a very welcome addition to European energy supplies.
We're all concerned about what this does to Europe and its ability to get access to energy. What does it do to Russia and its position as really a dominant supplier of energy over the years?
Well, Russia has been, although Putin once said he didn't like the term an energy superpower, he liked the money and he liked the political clout that comes from it. I think that days are ending as an energy superpower, because the Europeans have basically said we're done. We don't regard Russia anymore as a reliable supplier. Their oil and gas is unwanted. It's going to take time to unwind that. So Russia will continue to be a major producer, but it will be a reduced energy power. And right now it's making a lot of money because prices are high, but its market for European gas over the next couple of years is really going to shrink.
Is the natural gas situation, I'm getting a question right now as we talk from a viewer, is it very different from natural gas because there is no strategic petroleum reserve for natural gas?
Right, exactly. And reserves of gas, the sort of storage is low, and their problem is to build it up for next year. So that's why gas is the biggest problem. And that if you start to have it disrupted, either because people don't want to buy it, or Putin says you have to pay in rubles, and the West Europe's not going to pay him in rubles, then you're going to see industry shutting down. You'll see prices going up. And we were just looking at that this morning. And what it also does is it means that the macroeconomic forecast will have to be lowered because economic activity will be lower. So Putin knows that he has leverage, but it is declining leverage over time. And obviously, his assumption that the Europeans would just salute a conquest of Ukraine has just turned out to be completely wrong, because he thought they would do that because of their dependence on Russian energy. Right now, they want to get out of Russian energy as quickly as they can. As you say, gas is the biggest problem. Oil is a problem, but gas is bigger.
Well, speaking of oil and gas, but really oil, it's on the agenda on Capitol Hill, as you know well, Dan, today, with those oil executives being summoned in, sort of almost to the principal's office, and asked to respond to the profits they're making, because they all are making lots of profits. What about this move to perhaps tax windfall profits? Once again, we've heard this before.
Yes, well, we've been there before. What they seem to have forgotten is that you had 2 price collapses, and the industry really retrenched, laid off a lot of people. Right now, it's making money. It's a cyclical industry. But this is, obviously the Congress people have to respond to their constituents. High gasoline prices are hurting people, but this is the result of basically, more than anything else, Putin and what's happening there. But this is a ritual of American politics. Big oil. This morning, I was looking back in the pages of the Prize and found that the first hearing on high gasoline prices was 99 years ago in the Senate, and prices went up, and then guess what? They went down. But the script is very familiar.
So, Dan, we always want to ask you, what are your projections at this point for the price of oil going through the rest of the year? At one point, you said you think it's to 120. Do you think we're headed there again?
Well, I think, I mean, there's always the question, what's going to be the wild card here? Is COVID in China going to really sort of slow down that economy and reduce demand, which would actually take the pressure off the price? But if not, I think we are going to be in a tight oil market, and particularly in a disrupted oil market, which is what makes it more imperative not to have this political antagonism that we have in this country, but we need a kind of close collaboration and cooperation between government and industry, as we've had in previous oil crises going back to 1956 and the Suez Crisis, even to World War II. This crisis could turn into an emergency. Therefore, managing together on a daily basis is what's going to be really needed to manage the logistics of supply around the world as this continues.
How bad is it? I mean, we've been through some energy crises before. Certainly, you and I both remember the 1970s. How does it compare?
Obviously, the one people go back to is the 1970s as the most severe. I think this potentially is worse because it involves not only oil, but it involves natural gas, involves coal, and it involves two countries that happen to be the nuclear superpowers. So the risks are as high as they seemed in the 1970s. The risks right now are higher.